Hello and thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report on NTD television. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Here's a look at today's top stories. A sixth bus of illegal immigrants arrived in Washington, D.C. from Texas. Earlier this month, Texas Governor Greg Abbott started sending these buses of illegal immigrants to Washington, drawing both praise and condemnation from different groups. Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs visited the border with a group of nearly 50 GOP lawmakers. We'll tell you what they witnessed and why they say it was important to experience the border firsthand. With energy prices skyrocketing, the White House makes a reversal in a key energy policy. The Biden administration resumes oil and gas leasing on federal lands. This after invoking the Defense Production Act to support renewable energy production. A sixth bus carrying illegal immigrants detained at the southern border left Texas and arrived in Washington, D.C. late on Sunday. In a statement, Texas Governor Greg Abbott had confirmed the bus was en route to the nation's capital. Abbott says it must be done this way due to what he describes as the Biden administration's mismanagement of illegal immigrants pouring in from Mexico. The mayor of border city McAllen, Texas, is imploring President Biden not to end Title 42. In a letter to the president, Mayor Javier Villalobos says that although his border city's community is giving, well-prepared, and proactive, no amount of preparation will allow the government to respond to the anticipated surge of illegal immigrants once Title 42 is lifted. The Biden administration reacted to Abbott's busing of illegal immigrants, calling it a publicity stunt. Title 42 is effective until May 23rd, after which the number of illegal immigrants released into the U.S. is expected to double. Border Patrol detained a record number of illegal immigrants at the southern border last month. That number included 23 people on the U.S. terrorist watch list. The Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, counted over 221,000 illegal immigrants attempting to cross into the United States from Mexico. Congressman James Comer of Kentucky, who serves as the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, and Congressman John Katko, ranking member of the House Homeland Security Committee, wrote to DH Secretary Mayorkas last month asking for clarification about the current administration's border policies, which allow terrorists to come into the United States. Last month, DHS reported releasing over 80,000 illegal immigrants into the United States. Congressman Andy Biggs represents Arizona's 5th District. He recently had a chance to visit the southern border with many of his colleagues in the House of Representatives. We're happy to have the congressman on to discuss. Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Congressman, you represent the 5th District in the border state of Arizona. You visit the border quite frequently. However, most recently you were there with a delegation of your colleagues, many from non-border states. Did those colleagues specifically find it valuable to visit?
Yes, I think they did. And the reason that we've taken about 45 or 50 members to the border is it's hard to conceive of just how dramatic, how big it is, how big the problem is, until you actually see it. And so we went from San Diego to Yuma, and you see multiple sectors, three border sectors as determined by the Customs and Border Patrol. And I'll just tell you, it is amazing. They come away, their eyes are wide open. They understand more than ever the ramifications of continuing to have an open border, and they're resolved to make changes and to evangelize, if you will, around the world, around the country, and in Congress of some things that we can do and we must do if we're going to secure the border.
Congressman, you touched upon it, the vastness of the border. What other types of things do you think are you're able to see and experience when visiting versus hearing about it in a briefing or watching on the news what's going on there?
Well, I'll give you an example. When we got to Yuma, we took a nighttime spin with some Border Patrol agents, and we just drove on down by one of the open areas. So you've got fencing on either side, but you have an open area. And there were 40 or 50 individuals who'd come across the border. They were just sitting there waiting to be picked up by transport for Border Patrol. But there was that transport wasn't going to happen for at least 2.5 hours. And you had only one Border Patrol agent, just one, that was managing those 50. And so then we went on down about a mile and a half further to another gap in the fence. And again, you had 40 or 50 people, maybe as many as 60 in that group. And once again, only one Border Patrol agent still waiting for transport, and that was going to be 2 to 3 hours off. And when you see that, and then the next morning you go out and you see that happen again in this exact same locations, different people, and you realize that in the few hours before we got there, they had each of those locations had processed 200 individuals. That opens eyes because it's 24/7. And in both of those groups, we didn't have anybody from Mexico or the Northern Triangle states. And in one of those groups, everybody was either from Uzbekistan or Cuba. And so this is not coming through just south of the border. They're coming through that southern border, but they're coming from last year 157 different nations.
So let me ask you, it's being reported that President Biden has already ordered the Border Patrol to begin allowing illegal immigrants into the country by granting them multiple exemptions to the current health regulation. Is that the case?
Yes. I've seen the reports, and I've been told that that is the case. That happened after we left the border. So we don't know the immediate impact, but we do know that already there was an influx, a slight surge starting to happen because of the promise of Title 42 going away. And this just provides another draw factor. When we were there, it was between 8,000 and 10,000 people a day that we were apprehending. That does not include the people who we don't catch, which is probably another 4,000 a day, something like that.
Congressman Biggs, Texas Governor Greg Abbott is on his, I believe, 6th busload of sending illegal immigrants who cross in Texas and are apprehended to Washington, D.C. Is this achieving the intended effect?
Well, I think the intended effect was to actually draw attention to the border crisis as much as anything. And so, yeah, the answer would be yes. But I'll tell you one other aspect which we've discovered is that they have, when I say they, the administration has actually tried to move people away from those particular areas, whether it's Del Rio, whether it's La Jolla, Texas, or over at McAllen. They've tried to move them over to other areas away from the Texas border. And if that's the case, then other states are going to be inundated. You're going to be squeezing the balloon their way. But I do think what Governor Abbott's doing is so important because he's showing two things. Number one, that the states can make a difference on this border crisis issue. They have to. And the second thing is he is drawing attention internationally to the absurdity of the Biden administration. And I personally believe that's why they've gone ahead and they're resentful of Texas. And so they've gone ahead and, as you say, they've started granting exemptions to Title 42 exclusions from our country. And I think that is purely political, and it's cynical, and it's dastardly.
Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Restoring Trump-era energy independence. This is proving to be a fine line to walk for the Biden administration as they try to appease climate activists. But the White House is also facing mounting pressure to lower prices at the pump. Over the holiday weekend, the White House announced they'll resume selling oil and gas leases on federal lands. But the administration is still trying to secure a path forward on renewable energy production in the U.S. How is this plan to transition to renewables coming along? NTD's Melina Weiskup has the details.
President Biden has vowed to transition America to renewable energy. One goal is to have half of all U.S. vehicles electric in just 8 years. But right now, that goal conflicts with another pressing matter, U.S. energy independence. NTD spoke with a senior policy analyst to learn more. Is this a goal do you think we can possibly realistically reach by then without relying on foreign adversaries for those critical materials?
It's going to be a challenge. Currently today, we rely a lot on other countries for importing materials to process electric vehicles. Currently, 90% of rare earth minerals, for example, are processed in China. A target for the Biden administration is to broaden our, where we get mineral reserves for certain clean energy technologies.
Lithium is a key ingredient in batteries for electric cars. Right now, the U.S. only has one lithium mine in Nevada, and there are less than 30 battery plants. To accelerate this effort, the Biden administration in March invoked the Defense Production Act to help invest in building some of this infrastructure.
And so what that practically means is that he can use his power to issue grants and loans to create new battery mines and processing plants.
The Department of Energy is working towards opening 13 more battery plants by 2025. But even as we start to see more electric cars on the road, some energy analysts point out that electric vehicles still must rely on a power source for energy.
But at the end of the day, you have to take a look at under the hood, where does the electricity for your electric vehicles come from? So unless you have a solar-powered electric vehicle, you have to plug into somewhere.
He says one solution is to have a mixed energy approach, such as using a mix of coal, natural gas, renewables, and nuclear energy, while using technology to reduce CO2 emissions.
For example, coal can be cleaned up a lot through filters, through processing of the ore components so that it burns a lot cleaner.
And while there is carbon capture technology to help reduce the amount of emissions released into the air, the technology is expensive, which is one reason it's not more popular. As for nuclear energy, right now, Russia and China dominate the nuclear energy market. Now on Capitol Hill, there's a bipartisan push led by Senators Joe Manchin and Jim Risch to invest resources into developing American nuclear energy. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
A federal judge in Florida overturned the CDC mask mandate covering airplanes and other public transportation. She stated the mandate exceeded the CDC's authority. Judge Catherine Kimball Mizell made the decision today. She said the CDC improperly failed to justify its decision and did not follow a proper rulemaking process. The CDC recently extended the mask mandate for another 15 days through May 3rd. The mandate was originally set to expire on April 18th. Judge Mizell was appointed by former President Trump in 2020. The U.S. House of Representatives has a new dean, and he's pledging to make Congress more civil. Republican Congressman Harold Rogers of Kentucky has served in Congress for 42 years and is officially the new dean of the House. The position goes to the longest-serving member of Congress. As Dean of the House, Rogers will also have the formal duty of swearing in the new Speaker every 2 years. Though it is largely ceremonial, the dean also has the informal role of setting the values of the institution. New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith is actually tied with Rogers for his length of service in the House of Representatives. But Congress uses a unique tie-breaking system, the alphabet, so Rogers won out, beating Smith by one letter. Congressman Rogers will be replacing previous Dean Don Young of Alaska, who recently passed away while en route back to his district. President Biden and the First Lady welcomed children and their parents to the White House for the annual Easter egg roll. In spite of the damp weather, the festivities went on. Children, education, and curriculum. These are expected to play a major role in the upcoming fall elections. We speak to a dad and a military vet who decided to throw his hat in the ring to become a school board member. Why did he do it? And more importantly, did he win? 4 predominantly Democrat-leaning states are trying to overturn a federal cap on tax deductions. The Supreme Court has rejected to hear the appeal. Hello and welcome back to NTD's Capitol Report. I'm your host, Steve Lance. The White House held its annual Easter egg roll on Monday, and First Lady Jill Biden kicked off the event. NTD's Carrie Nunez has the details.
The First Lady oversaw some educational activities mixed in with the traditional egg roll.
For generations, presidents and first ladies and kids just like you celebrated the Easter egg roll together, racing and making crafts, reading books, and of course, meeting the Easter Bunny.
It was President Biden's first time to welcome kids and parents due to the pandemic restrictions last year.
And welcome to the White House. Welcome to your house. Welcome to the South Lawn. Thank you and happy, happy Easter.
President Biden and the First Lady joined in on some of the activities. Thousands of kids and parents attended despite the overcast skies.
The first White House egg roll was in 1878. It broadcast on the radio in 1929 and then on the internet in 1998. So we can all watch it. However, many would argue that nothing compares to the real-life experience, even on a wet day.
Stuart McLaurin, president of the White House Historical Association, was glad to resume the egg roll in person after last year's cancellation. He visited the White House as a kid and knew it was a big deal.
I do have very vivid memories of that and the impact that these places, these historic places, the White House, the feel, the symbol, the awareness, even at a young age, of who had lived in that building, who had worked in that building.
Every year, the egg roll attracts close to 30,000 people. Reporting from the nation's capital, Carrie Nunez, NTD News.
Florida's Department of Education is rejecting dozens of math textbooks from kindergarten to 12th grade. And officials say the books include indoctrinating concepts such as critical race theory. The department reviewed over 130 submitted textbooks, and over 40% did not meet Florida's K-12 curriculum standards or contain prohibited topics. Officials rejected the books for including concepts like critical race theory, Common Core, and social emotional learning in math. About 71% of those books rejected were for kindergarten through 5th grade. One of what some might consider a silver lining coming out of the lockdowns and remote learning for children was that it opened the door and shed light on what was being taught in the classrooms. The state of Virginia likely felt the political repercussions of these issues coming to light. Now, parents around the country are mobilizing and taking steps to make sure that inappropriate content is not being taught in classrooms around the country. This issue has been uniting parents from both political parties. One of those parents who recently took a leap to get involved is John Aguela of Osceola County, Florida. We had a chance to speak with him a short time ago at an event we were covering.
John Arguellos, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you very much.
Now, John, you are a school board member in Osceola County, Florida, recently elected. Tell us what brought you into this service.
Well, originally, I got in before school boards was at the front of politics, really. And I thought I was going to come in and kind of improve processes and systems from a business background. I had no idea what was waiting for me once I was elected.
Now, I mean, how does your average parent who wants to get involved, they're seeing, what's going on out there, and how would you advise them to go out and do it?
I think the number one thing is to watch a school board meeting, visit your school board, and that will provide you with all the inspiration that any person needs to get involved. 5 minutes watching a school board meeting, and all of a sudden every citizen becomes fired up on what's happening with their kids that no one was paying attention to.
So what are some of the major issues that you found were really concerning parents?
I think the number one thing is we hear a lot about CRT, we hear a lot about books that are very concerning, but the number one thing is a lack of transparency that school districts have with parents. And that's really what's ruined education in the United States. It used to be a teacher and a parent had a great relationship, and that was a team that educated kids. But today what you have is a bureaucratic system, in my case that's $1.7 billion large, and they don't want parents involved necessarily. What they want is the freedom to control education and to control what they're learning and to control the aspects and philosophy of education, and that's not necessarily appropriate. Really, the parent is the number one educator for their kids, and it's in partnership with the teacher that they provide a good education. But right now, it's about lack of transparency, and that's happening all across the country, not just in Osceola County.
Now, when it comes to running a campaign, your average parent may not know what to do or where to start, but they want to get involved. So how would you, advise them to do that?
I would reach out to liberty-minded groups who are interested in education for kids that is effective in terms of intellectual education, not people who are trying to push an ideology on kids, right? And when you find these like-minded groups, Moms for Liberty is a good one, they will help people. You can talk to your parties, but really the parties don't want to get involved in a nonpartisan group, or it's really about the community, sense of community, and that's why I like Moms for Liberty, because it's just a bunch of parents that got together and decided they weren't going to take this anymore type of thing. So it's really about getting involved, watching a school board meeting, going to talking with your teachers, finding out what you didn't know that was going on in education, and all of a sudden you become inspired. You meet other people. There's other people that will be at these school board meetings who are really interested, and it's just it's a powerful environment right now to be a part of.
Now, is it like traditional politics in the sense where you get out and you start, canvassing neighborhoods, door knocking, signage around? How does that all work?
Absolutely. It's really the small-scale traditional campaigning. Every community is different. In my community, it involved all of that. It involved mailers. It involved signs. It involved knocking on doors, canvassing. So it really involved everything. You got to raise a little bit of money. There's a lot of involved, and you build connections with people who are like-minded, and then people who are not so like-minded, and then you realize that it's extremely political. And it's kind of like baseball, where you have the pros at the very top, and then you have farm teams, and I'm kind of like at this farm level AA ball kind of situation right now, and parents. But here's the thing: people are extremely passionate, right? Nobody's going to go and care so much what the congressman is doing, but when you mess with people's kids, all of a sudden people really come out. And now it's a game where the AA team, like me, has more viewers, more people paying attention than people do at the very large levels. So parents are getting involved today like I've never seen, like I've never been involved before.
Now, you're relatively newly elected. You went up against an incumbent, so it must have been a little bit of a mental block that you had to beat somebody who was already there. What was your mindset like going into the race?
Well, for me, I'm a combat veteran. I have not been too far removed from my service, so I had that mindset that I'm also a very competitive person by nature. So for me, it became very personal. I was out there. I was wearing out shoes. I was raising money. I was confronting people who wanted to be involved or who did not want to be involved, and really taking it to task. I'm the most right-leaning board member in the most left-leaning district in my county. So people, when that situation happens, that people are involved at levels that they've never been before. So it's just a matter of working hard, not taking no for an answer, and talking to as many people as you can.
John Arguelles, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
And in case you did not know, today is tax day. 4 states, including New York, are challenging a federal cap on tax deductions. Their efforts failed again as the Supreme Court decided not to hear the appeal. The 4 states are New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Maryland. They tried to rule out a Trump-era federal cap that was a $10,000 cap on the deduction of state and local property and income taxes for federal taxable income. Lower courts ruled against the states twice. DC-based think tank The Tax Foundation found that most Americans received a net tax cut with the current policy. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is back after missing 2 weeks of arguments. The 73-year-old justice today joined the new 2-week session. Thomas is the longest-serving member of the court. He was taken to the hospital about a month ago with flu-like symptoms. He stayed there for about a week and attended arguments remotely afterwards. His colleague, Justice Stephen Breyer, will be stepping down following this session and will be replaced by Ketanji Brown Jackson later this summer. And that's all we have for you this evening on the Capitol Report. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to visit us at ntd.com/Capitol Report to stay up to date with our latest interviews. I'm your host, Steve Lance. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.